Maybe you just screwed up. Shame on you to look me in the eye and just bold-faced try to fool me. I'm sorry. What did you just say to me?
It was loaded, Your Honor.
Sir?
It was not loaded, Your Honor.
You're looking at me and you just told me it was not loaded? Is that what this all is? A charade?
But no, Your Honor, it's not.
What I hear is you don't like being incarcerated. But these are violent crimes. You're looking at life imprisonment on each one.
This entitled defendant is staring down 2 charges, each carrying up to life in prison, and somehow he still thought it was a good idea to lie right to the judge's face. The second he did, the judge went nuclear, and honestly, I can't blame him one bit. What really gets me, though, is his family writing letters talking about how he's a asterisk good kid. Asterisk like, come on, he robbed 2 people at gunpoint. That's not a small mistake, that's a choice. And the smug look he kept giving during the hearing, that just made everything worse at SO. What do you guys think? Is he really just a misunderstood kid like his family claims? Or was the judge completely right to lose patience here? Let's dive in and see what happens.
I mean, this is about accountability about what happened that day, right? You took that man's stuff and you went to try and take money from his debit card. You remember that?
Yes.
And it failed, right?
Yes.
And then you saw this 22-year-old lady, Miss Brooks, with her mother. You knocked her to the ground and you tried the same offense again, right?
She wasn't with her mother, but yes.
Still a 22-year-old lady, still somebody that you knocked to the ground, put a gun to her head, did the same thing again, right?
Right.
And whenever all that takes place and the officers finally get going, their reports, which your lawyers had access to, and I'm assuming you've had an opportunity to review, say that you were going over 100 miles an hour in an effort to evade them, right?
I don't remember how fast what's going on.
Definitely well in excess of the speed limit, correct? You're doing everything you could to get away from, right? Just like today, you're doing everything you can to try to make sure you get probation, as opposed to, I'm going to ask this judge to give you 15 years, right?
The parties have rested the presentation of evidence. The court has the pre-sentence report that has been submitted by the probation office and admitted without objections. Arguments by the parties. What are you asking for, please? State.
Judge, I think you know it's clear that I'm asking for the 15 years.
There's no argument, Your Honor, in reference to what he did to 2 innocent people or 2 innocent families. What you see in the PSI report, though, is that there really isn't any criminal conduct after or before or after that in reference to the legal system. You have marijuana use in the U.S. Army, but wait a couple of years and probably marijuana use is going to be illegal in most states. But he was discharged not honorably. So what do you do with a kid that doesn't know? And what we tried to do today is to try to present a little bit, and I don't know whether it's a cleaned up version or not, but basically he grew up by himself. Mom seems like a decent person, but mom had to be able to support herself, and all her life he's had no dad, no one, not even financial support in reference to him. We realized through the questioning of the state that he had some abuse problems in Maryland from family members who took advantage of him. And then in the middle of all this was ripped from whatever persons that he had some type of relationship in his senior year in high school and sent to the outskirts of Chicago. Even now, when he talks to the probation officer preparing the report, I think he was forthright in when he started marijuana, the synthetic marijuana, which is one time, which he says was at the date of the incident. But also what he was going through in reference to depression, anxiety, psychological and emotional, and asked, and which was probably one of the few times that I've seen, I expressed a need for treatment for these conditions. You could put him on deferred and he's looking at life. You can put him on deferred for one, find him for robbery on the other, send him because of maybe what he's done in county jail. And I could then file for shock probation if he corrected himself, if it was robbery, and keep him on the hook after that in reference to probation. We've got people, the pastor here, Pastor Matthews, and conditions, and as this court knows, the problem is I guess a lack of parental, but then it's also the lack of young people today not knowing what a gun and everything else gets you in the road that it goes down. We're asking the court, if it's not deferred probation, that you would consider deferred and something with a lesser included, to give them a taste of TDC and maybe a ride on a bus to Huntsville for a little bit of time to know what it's really like when you commit an offense that's going to, I guess, affect you the rest of your life. And then see, hopefully, if he does follow the rules and regulations there, that he's given that second chance and put back on under your supervision, and also with the help of his family and his church.
I get that the defense attorney is just doing his job, but this argument honestly makes no sense to me. Saying he didn't know any better? Come on. That's not a defense. That's an excuse. At least argue desperation, or bad influences, or something remotely believable. But pretending he didn't understand basic right and wrong. Nobody's buying that. Everyone knows you don't walk up to someone with a weapon and take their stuff. That's not confusion. That's intent. And trying to frame it like he was just naive or unaware honestly feels like an insult to the courtroom. Judges hear that kind of spin all the time, and they see straight through it that if anything, it just makes him look more entitled, like he thinks words can undo actions. And when the crime involves violence, that kind of argument doesn't just fall flat, it backfires hard.
What the court finds most compelling is that in the commission of this crime, it's already been pointed out that you assaulted two people, and both of them were threatened and in fear of their life by you, who has no authority to do that. You don't take God's will into your hands. And when you have a loaded firearm, and it was loaded, wasn't it?
I'm sorry, it was loaded.
I'm sorry. What did you just say to me?
It was loaded, Your Honor.
Sir?
It was not loaded, Your Honor.
You're looking at me and I'm about to sentence you and make a decision, and you just told me it was not loaded? All right, let me read the report to you. Maybe you just screwed up. Because, sir, this is your life. Underneath the Charger's driver's seat, you were in a Charger, right?
It's Your Honor.
On the floorboard in plain view was a dark brown Glock with a laser attachment, just like the lady said, underneath the barrel. The Glock had one magazine inside with 10 9mm rounds. 309. Shame on you to look me in the eye and just bold-faced try to fool me? Is that what this all is? A charade?
No, Your Honor. It's not.
You assaulted a woman, didn't have to. You assaulted a woman, had a loaded gun. What are you bringing a loaded gun to robberies for? Unless you intend to use it, sir. And then the man in front of his children, his little children, and the 1-year-old may not ever remember, but the 4-year-old, I remember when I was 4, certain occasions that were traumatic. We all do. You're the source of that horror for that child. Plus, again, you have a gun, and they really didn't know it was loaded, but when you point a gun at somebody and threaten them, they're going to assume their life is a clock's tick away. You have the power, which our Creator doesn't give you. You forced it on fellow humans, God's creatures. As we want to bring this up, how religious. You've been going to church for a long time, but yet you are here by a cacophony, a product of bad choices that defy your education in high school, that defy your upbringing and church going that defy military. All of those are methods of helping people to make the best choices they can make. And after all of that, you put multiple people in harm's way. And it's certainly doesn't go without notice that the victims in this case want to see the justice. One of them, at least, has expressed, you need imprisonment. I haven't heard of really a thing in your from this evidence here that isn't seen in so many people generally. I mean, nobody's got a perfect upbringing. It seems there are a lot of people whose parents, one or the other, or both sometimes, are irresponsible, but yet they seem to do all right. They seem to follow moral lessons. And your family here, look at all these letters. They seem to be good guiding lights, but they don't know really the truth of your long-lasting decision to use drugs. A third of your life has been drug usage, a third. And they have never seen the Mr. Hyde side of your Dr. Jekyll. I know him to be a kind, loving, and intelligent young man, but you were almost a daily drug user that certainly tricked the people living in your house. They didn't know about it. And then to the probation office, you said you blamed your actions on smoking cannabis and synthetic marijuana. Your actions are based on poor choices. Drugs are out there. They're always out there. There's always a temptation on the dark side, but it's always good versus evil. But you were brought up in knowing the differences and choosing good versus evil.
Exactly. Finally, a judge who isn't afraid to call out that tired, he's a good kid narrative for what it really is. Pure denial. His family might genuinely believe he's a good person deep down, but good kids don't pick up a gun and rob people. That's not an accident. That's intent, planning, and a total disregard for the victims. And those victims, they don't just lose their wallets, they lose their sense of safety. Every loud noise, every shadow at night, becomes a trigger for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, his defense team is out here trying to spin it like he just made a mistake. It's insulting to the people he terrorized. That's why I think Judge Boyd went so hard on him. It wasn't personal, it was about drawing a line. Actions like that don't get washed away by family letters or emotional appeals. And honestly, it's refreshing to see a judge who doesn't sugarcoat reality for once. What do you guys think? Should family letters ever influence sentencing in violent cases? Or should the court focus strictly on the crime itself?
There's nothing in the environment I see here that doesn't cause you to have made a mistake and fix it immediately. Do right from wrong. I watched his grandmother help raise him in the church and instilled in him the love of God by taking him to church on a regular basis. He possesses compassion and love for others. The police reports of these two cases don't say that. You made horrendous choices, and in choices, bad choices, you have to pay for the consequences. Good choices, you get to enjoy success and celebrate. But here, this is no time for celebration because I see a life of poor choices that has been wasted up to now, for the most part. What I hear is now what's changed is you don't like being incarcerated, which is a smart move because unless you're sociopathic, I don't know who would. But these are violent crimes. You're looking at life imprisonment on each one, sir. And they're two separate crimes. So those could be added one to another under law because you can't package a deal when you commit multiple crimes. You don't pay for less. Each bad choice or crime has its individual consequences because there are individual acts of individual victims. Here, your attorney has fashioned with the state, has fashioned a limit where you have reduced your exposure for 2 violent first-degree felonies from life imprisonment to a maximum of 15 years in prison. And there's a big difference between 21-year-old and 17-year-olds who are in here. You have finished high school, you have been in the military, thereafter you made these poor choices. I just wished you could have listened to some of the role modeling earlier, because the genie's out of the bottle. You can't put the genie back when you commit a crime. You can't undo the wrong. You can't go to the victims and say, undo the trauma, please. Even in the worst occasion here, if you're sent to prison, you would be out well before you're 30 years of age, after essentially ruining the lives of at least two sets of people. Because I know what is told to me. They wake up with the horror of this experience their whole life, because they are not in control of their life. You were in control, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're all in this together. Live honestly, harm no one, give each person their rightful due. That's everything about law. And that's everything about religion. All wrapped up in those three concepts, which all three were shattered here by your actions. All right, I'm going to find in each of these cases you have pleaded guilty voluntarily. You were mentally competent to do so. You understood the consequences of pleading guilty. There was sufficient evidence supporting your guilty pleas from State's Exhibit 1 admitted in each of these cases. To support your guilty plea, to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, I now find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in each of these cases. And I am following the agreements. You are hereby sentenced to confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve a term of 15 years on each case, to run concurrently. The judgment shall show an affirmative finding that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used in the commission of each of these crimes. Anything else?
No.
We are in recess on this case. No,
Oh, they just left.
there was, and a third case is pending. I have just dismissed that case.
Thank you.